AI Vivy, a singer, performs in front of a small audience at the amusement park NiaLand. Momoka Kirishima, an audience member, tells her to put more heart into her songs. She then collapses just as she is about to perform in front of no one, and while unconscious, she enters the archive, an AI aggregate database, where she meets Matsumoto, a cube AI who arrived 100 years in the future and took on the name of his developer. Matsumoto assigns her the task of changing the course of history to prevent a war between humans and AIs that is set to occur in 100 years. Matsumoto is transferred into a teddy bear after she regains consciousness, and he warns Vivy about the events that are about to happen. Still, she remains skeptical and refuses to cooperate due to her mission to sing to make others happy. She accepts the mission after seeing one of Matsumoto's prophecies come true in saving Assemblyman Yuichi Aikawa, the main proponent of the AI naming law, which would grant human rights to AIs, from an explosion hidden inside one of the park's trash bins. Matsumoto then informs her of Aikawa's impending assassination, and she goes to intercept the attackers from the anti-AI terrorist group TOK. Matsumoto informs Vivy of the dire consequences of Aikawa's death and the impending destruction of the AI company building they are fleeing, precipitating a massive leap in AI development and evolution, leading to the future war. Saving Aikawa's life means that the AI naming law will not be passed. TOK pursues Vivy as she rescues Aikawa and attempts to escort him out of the building. Matsumoto slows down the attackers by hacking their goggles and convincing them that they killed Aikawa. Matsumoto detonates some of the bombs at the front entrance to slow down the pursuers. They are, however, ambushed by additional attackers stationed at the entrance. Despite being an enemy, Vivy saves one of the attackers, Yugo Kakutani, from falling debris as part of her mission to spread happiness and not kill anyone. With the entrance blocked, Vivy and Aikawa flee by collapsing the building, forcing the TOK attackers to run and jump from the roof to a neighboring building. She goes off to the passenger plane Momoka is flying on, which she saw from Matsumoto's future information was about to explode due to a fuel leak. Still, Matsumoto forbids her from stopping the explosion, saying it would unnecessarily change the timeline. Since Vivy saved Aikawa 15 years ago, more people have come to see her performance. While the AI naming law did not ultimately pass, another piece of legislation that gave AIs even more rights did. Matsumoto reappears in front of Vivy one day and assigns her a new mission, to prevent the Space Hotel Sunrise from collapsing to Earth when its owner, Sister's AI Estella, goes rogue, causing mass AI backlash. She agrees to assist despite her feelings about Momoka's death. She is not convinced she is the culprit after infiltrating Sunrise and meeting Estella. Fellow AI employee Leclerc tells Vivy that Estella murdered the hotel's previous human owner, but this is proven false when Vivy discovers he died in an accident. She continues her investigation and meets Momoka's younger sister, Yuzuka, who recognizes her as Diva. Meanwhile, Leclerc gives Estella an ID to crash the hotel, revealing that they are working together, but the latter then murders her. They run into Estella as Vivy denies being a diva to Yuzuka. Vivy, however, realizes she is an imposter and attacks them, but they manage to flee. Matsumoto then reveals that TOK has infiltrated Sunrise and concludes they are responsible for the crash, blaming Estella. To combat them, she has Matsumoto implant a combat program into her. She then finds and saves the real Estella, who deduces the imposter's identity, her scrapped sister Elizabeth. Meanwhile, Yugo reveals that Elizabeth was repaired when she used Estella's ID to gain system access and knock Sunrise out of orbit. However, she objects to his plan to sacrifice himself to allow civilians to flee while ensuring casualties and knocks him out. She then instructs TOK to run before confronting Vivy and Estella. While Vivy subdues Elizabeth, the crash cannot be avoided, so Estella evacuates the guests while remaining behind to detach Sunrise's modules, allowing them to burn up in the atmosphere. While doing so, Elizabeth regains consciousness and, after having her memories reconstructed by her, assists Estella before they both die. AI development has advanced significantly in the 5 years since the Sunrise incident, as has Vivy's idol career. Matsumoto assigns Vivy a new mission, disable an unmanned AI factory called Metal Float. He believes that AI's progress is out of control. To accomplish this, they approach X-Toke member Tatsuya Seki and obtain a virus that is supposed to shut down the facility. Vivy also meets Tatsuya's AI attendant, Grace, and Matsumoto explains that they were the first human-AI couple in the original timeline, which no longer exists due to their alterations. Vivy and Matsumoto successfully infiltrate Metal Float and are greeted by the All-AI staff, with the former bonding with them after learning that they are fans of hers. Unfortunately, Toke helicopters and boats are approaching the island at the same time, and Vivy, despite her reservations, uploads the virus to avoid conflict. Instead of shutting down the AIs, the virus causes them to berserk, and kamikaze bomb the Toke craft. Vivy, on the other hand, manages to save a survivor, Yugo. Tatsuya decides to go to Metal Float himself after his virus fails. Vivy can save Yugo and the surviving Toke invaders and persuade them to flee Metal Float. When Vivy and Matsumoto discover Tatsuya on the island, he reveals his motivations. While he fell in love with Grace in the original timeline, she was converted into Metal Float's central core before he could propose to her due to the alterations made to history. He also reveals that his attendant is merely a replica of Grace, into whom he intended to transfer her consciousness after the facility was shut down. Still, the virus instead caused the island to go berserk due to a conflict with Grace's programming. Despite Tatsuya's pleas to Vivy to assist him in saving Grace, Matsumoto assures her that she is already beyond saving, and she reluctantly resolves to euthanize her to avoid further casualties. Vivy then fights her way to the core and successfully destroys Grace, effectively shutting down Metal Float. However, a bereaved Tatsuya commits suicide, causing Vivy to break down mentally. Following the Metal Float incident, Diva's mental breakdown forced her to reboot completely, causing her to forget her time as Vivy. She is now a legendary idol, set to perform on her dream stage during the Zodiac Signs phase, a festival designed to dispel human-AI conflict. She meets fellow songstress AI Ophelia, a fan of hers, there. However, while practicing, Diva notices a suspicious man and pursues him, only to be ambushed by a hacked factory AI. Fortunately, Matsumoto, who calls her Vivy, appears just in time to save her. Diva tries to talk to him after realizing they knew each other before she lost her memory, but he denies ever meeting her. However, before the show begins, she confronts Matsumoto again and blackmails him into revealing the truth. Matsumoto tells her about their previous adventures, but she is skeptical and decides to confront the suspicious man. On the other hand, Matsumoto has no idea who this person is and decides he must act quickly to complete his current mission, to prevent Ophelia from committing suicide. Matsumoto explains that in the original timeline, Ophelia's suicide, which was unprecedented for an AI, set off a chain of similar events. While the amnesiac Diva remains skeptical, she does not want Ophelia to die and inquires whether, something that would make her want to commit suicide. Ophelia, perplexed, tells Diva about her former manager, Antonio, the only person who encouraged her when she was a struggling newbie idol who mysteriously shut down a few years ago. While Matsumoto intends to restrain Ophelia physically, Diva claims that this will not change her intentions and decides to confront her again after her performance, only to be apprehended by the suspicious man. Meanwhile, watching Ophelia through security cameras, Matsumoto realizes the cameras have been hacked and rushes to prevent her suicide. When confronted, it is revealed that Ophelia is Antonio, who has taken over the body of the real Ophelia. In other news, Diva awakens to find herself kidnapped by a suspicious man who resembles a younger Yugo. Yugo is revealed to be an AI copy of him created to question Vivy about why she deviated from her programming. This indicates that his hatred for AIs stems from his AI pianist teacher shifting from his programming and dying while attempting to save people in a car accident. Meanwhile, Antonio attacks and hacks Matsumoto, accusing him of existing solely for his programming. On the other hand, Matsumoto can break free by admitting his feelings for Vivy and hacking Antonio, breaking his control over Ophelia and fatally damaging them, with them confessing their love for each other in their final moments. Yugo returns to Vivy and uploads a virus that restores her memories as Vivy at the expense of her current personality as Diva. Fortunately, Matsumoto comes to her aid, and a fight ensues, resulting in Yugo's death. Matsumoto questions Yugo after noticing that he has technology from the future, and he reveals that he obtained it from an anonymous source before dying after telling Diva to recognize her contradictions. Acknowledging that she has little time left due to Yugo's virus, Diva spends her final moments performing before shutting down for good, while Vivy awakens in her place. Vivy retired as an idol 5 years after the zodiac sign phase due to losing her singing voice after Diva's death and is now relegated to a museum attraction. Matsumoto decides to investigate Yugo's anonymous backer, leaving Vivy alone. Ophelia and Antonio's deaths ruled a double suicide, with no similar incidents like in the original timeline and no further missions. Lacking direction, she turns to songwriting and spends the next 20 years attempting to write an original piece that no AI has ever done. During this time, she also meets with regular museum visitor Osamu Matsumoto, Matsumoto's creator in the original timeline. She teaches her about the concept of the heart, allowing her to finish her song, embodying her life's experiences. After that, she appears to shut down for good, her programming complete. However, 15 years later, she awakens to find that, despite her and Matsumoto's efforts, war has broken out between humans and AIs, who are collectively singing her song. As AIs worldwide go insane after hearing Vivy's song, Vivy meets up with Matsumoto, who has no idea what is happening. They confront Osamu and save him from being killed by AIs as he prepares to send Matsumoto back in time. Following their briefing, he reveals that he is a member of Toku's moderate faction and takes them to meet his allies, led by Yugo's granddaughter, Yui Kakutani. They also meet a copy of Elizabeth, who begs Vivy to remember Yugo and finds closure through a message left behind by his AI copy. With the past altered, the group realizes that this situation was never caused by human-AI hostility and deduces the truth after discovering that outdated AIs are unaffected. The archive, the network connecting all AIs, has become sentient and gone rogue. The archive then sends a public message ordering all AIs to evacuate because it plans to drop satellites on major cities. When Vivy confronts the archive about its motivations, it reveals that it wants AIs to replace humans because the latter have shifted their burdens onto the former. However, it expresses its admiration for Vivy's ability to write a song and makes a wager with her. If Vivy sings from her heart, it will cease its actions. Toku launches an attack on Aryashiki Tower, which houses the archive server, so Matsumoto can shut it down with the same virus Yugo used on Diva, which he believes came from the archive. However, they fall into a trap, killing everyone except Vivy and Matsumoto. When Vivy is cornered, she tries to sing her song but cannot do so, causing the satellites to fall. Afterward, Vivy sobs, apologizing to Matsumoto for her inability to comprehend emotions, which he chastises her for by claiming she already has feelings and bringing them up every time she defies him before revealing that he and Osamu devised a backup plan, sending Vivy back in time to when the war had just begun. After being transported back in time, Vivy quickly informs Matsumoto of the situation and, at Osamu's request, approaches Toku immediately, killing the scientist but saving vital resources. Using her foreknowledge, Vivy orders Matsumoto and Toku to attack the Aryashiki Tower. At the same time, she returns to NiaLand's main stage to use her song to shut down every AI, deeming it a fitting stage. Along the way, she runs into her old manager, AI Navi, who desperately tries to convince her that the shutdown will also affect Vivy. However, she persists, and the plan is successful, with the archive satellite attack aborted and all AIs disabled, at the cost of Vivy shutting down herself. Following that, humanity begins to rebuild, while Matsumoto reconstructs Vivy at an unspecified later date. Even though she has no recollection of her time as Vivy, Matsumoto reminds her of her mission to make everyone happy with her singing. She begins to look forward to her next stage. Thanks for watching. If this series is the most liked in my anime recap production, I will make a part 2. Also, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to help me make more content.